Hi guys, welcome to Love and Lust Audiobooks channel, updated daily with great audiobooks, so please subscribe to me if you don't want to miss it.
Well, let's go to read this book, My Enemy, My Mate, Part 2, Chapter 2, Chapter 20. Chapter 11, Movies and Movement, Ariana's post. I woke up later on Sunday morning. It was nearly 10 a.m. already. I guess I could not be too hard on myself, though. I was out late last night, and it was an exciting night for sure. I felt my heart beating erratically as I thought about how I finally found my soulmate. I clutched my bedspread close to my chest as I remembered touching his nose. I giggled as I thought about how beautiful that night was. It was so perfect and mysterious, and his scent was intoxicating. I felt as though I could never forget such a scent, even though the exact name for it was not coming to mind. All I knew for sure was that it was the scent of dew and the chill of early evening. Finally, I let out a sigh and fell back into my pillows to daydream. Ding, ding, ding. My thoughts were suddenly interrupted by several text messages appearing on my phone. I moaned angrily and rolled over to look at my phone. It was Carol. She sent me a total of 2 text messages starting 3 hours ago. She wished me a happy birthday and then started asking what I wanted to do today. She just sent me 3 more messages about going to watch a romance movie. I tried to watch this movie with Alex initially. He was going to take me to watch it, and we were going to have a whole romantic evening afterward. I sighed. I knew I could not tell Carol I didn't want to watch it because of Alex. She'd say to me, I can't keep putting my life on hold over it, but I didn't want to go. I tried to think of some flimsy excuse when I heard voices downstairs. I got up and listened to the agents. It was my mom and dad. And the third voice was Carol. I heard her say she was going to drag me out of bed and take me out. My parents laughed and told her to have good luck. I began to frantically get dressed as I heard her heavy footsteps coming up the steps. She was stomping to make me feel scared, and I knew it, and it always worked. I flung my pink top on and went to throw on my jeans when a heavy knock slammed on my door. Hey girl, I heard her voice howling from outside my door. I'm coming in 3, 2, 1. And when she hit 1, she flung the door open. I had just managed to button my jeans as she did. She began to laugh and said, "Aha, good morning, bedhead," and touched my hair with her hand and gave it a rub. I didn't even see my hair yet. Brush that hair. You're never going to find your mate looking like that. She rebuked me lightheartedly. I rolled my eyes at her, but did not say anything about the wolf last night. I was going to keep that to myself for now. We had a quick breakfast before we headed off to the movie theater. I wanted to walk, even though Carol had brought her truck and I had my new Mustang. I enjoyed smelling the morning. I knew she'd rather drive, but it was only a few miles. She'd survive. When we got to the movie theater, I felt a little better than I did earlier. The walk had warmed my blood, and my thoughts were focused on the company of my friend and a hopeful future. So I decided I'd enjoy the movie, even though it wasn't going to be with Alex. Unfortunately, my joy was short-lived. We were buying some overpriced popcorn for the movie when I turned around to see Alex. He was standing just a few feet away from me. He was with Patty, who was tickling his ear and hugging him from behind. Her chilly gaze and pale skin were contrasted by Alex's warm eyes and happy countenance. I still could not understand how he was with her. But he was, and they were going to see the movie with Patty. I was supposed to be watching it with him. My heart sank deep into my chest and my arms went limp. I didn't realize I had dumped popcorn all over the floor. I was too busy feeling my heart crack again. "Girl, what are you doing?" Carol woke me from my thoughts with a shrill shriek. when she saw what I had done with the popcorn. We began cleaning up the popcorn, and the attendant was friendly enough to give us another. Don't even think about him, because Carol hissed in my ear as we entered the theater. She had seen Alex and probably guessed why I did what I did. I nodded. I saw a movie poster of two people locked in a passionate kiss as I entered the theater. I thought of the wolf last night, but yeah, everything was going to be okay. I had found my mate, and soon we could embrace like that. My heart was happy again, and I enjoyed the film despite Patty and Alex making out behind me. Triton's pop. I mixed my cold cereal. I poured this over an hour ago, and I never even took a bite of it yet. I was too busy thinking. My mind went back to the meeting in the woods, to the beautiful white wolf who still did not know my true identity. But there was more than this on my mind. I felt my body pushing me to take on more. I wanted more responsibility in my pack. My father is the alpha, and I wanted to be like him. I wanted to push my capabilities further. Hey, Dad, I said to my father across the table from me. He peeked at me from under his newspaper and slowly folded it down to gaze at me. He could tell that what I wanted to say was serious. I want to be more active in the pack. I told him, I am your son. I want to live up to your legacy. I want to start learning now. Can I do the rest of this school semester from home? He seemed thoughtful for a long time and said nothing. I knew he did not doubt me. He was always pushing me to take on more and to be the uncontested leader of our pack. But there was politics even he could not topple. We will need to speak with the leader of the Black Sky Pack to get permission, but you have my blessing, son. My father told me, and I grinned. We traveled to the large White House where the leader of the Black Sky Pack lives. It looks like an old farmhouse that once belonged to some very rich plantation owner. There was no secret made about the riches of the Black Sky's leader. We were greeted by a heavy man with thick black hair and brown eyes. This was Stephen Marks, the leader of the Black Sky Pack. He looked very unassuming, but no one ever questioned him. He was a powerful wolf. It was rather elegant. He had a tea set on the table with some scones. He was apparently expecting us, since my dad mentioned he wished to introduce me to him. We sat down, and my father told him my plans after introducing me to him. Well, Triton, you seem like a strong and capable young man, Stephen said as he poured out the tea. But I'm afraid we cannot allow it. You see, the packs are already seeking to separate the schools. The peace is wavering already, and we must do all that we can to preserve it. Now is not the time to permit the young to take leadership. I was about to protest when my father interjected and began to argue with the man. I saw both of their faces grow dark with passion and anger. It was amazing to see my aging father with fire in his eyes and this fat, cheerful tea maker look like he was about to pounce on someone. I remained silent. My mind drifted back to the beautiful wolf last night. She was my mate. But she was also Ariana, daughter of the enemy pack's alpha. I knew deep down that we could never be together. I slumped in my seat as the two continued to fight, and I watched the leaves rattle outside the window. Chapter 12, Dewy Sky. Ariana's pop. I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror before heading to the class that morning. I straightened my hair with my hands so that my wavy hair fell over my shoulders in just the right way. I corrected the neckline of my blouse so that it was straight. I was wearing a light blue blouse and a slightly ruffled white knee-length skirt. This was not the best choice of garment for the autumn, but it was the right choice. If I wanted to please my mate, I hoped he would find me today at school and be impressed with this new outfit. I smiled at myself in my reflection and hoped he would not notice my slightly crooked front tooth. I used to have braces when I was little. Everyone always said it was invisible, but I always saw it. The longer I stared at myself, the more flaws I saw. I scowled. I hope he liked how I looked. What if he didn't, and he finds some other mate? I knew that that was supposed to be impossible. If you found your mate, it was predetermined and could not be changed, but I felt so sure about Alex. What if this happened again with my new mate? "You're here early today," Carol declared with a cheerful voice as she flung open the bathroom door. "Damn, you look great today. I see you're wearing the outfit I suggested to you yesterday. Do you like it?" I nodded happily, but still scrutinized my appearance in my mind. "You need to relax," she told me, putting her hands on my shoulders and giving me a little shake. "Confidence is the best aphrodisiac. It makes you seem invincible and irresistible." I sighed as I looked down at my small black buckled shoes and white socks. I looked like a little girl going to Sunday school. Nothing about me said irresistible. "Here, you need to just unbutton this," she told me as she opened my blouse more. Nothing wrong with making them wonder what they're missing. Carol was so good at this. I wished I had her confidence and assurance. I took a deep breath and tried to analyze my appearance with more confidence. "You look adorable," she said, clasping her hands. "You look just like a cute doll now. Go get them, girl," she told me as she pushed me out of the bathroom. Unfortunately, the whole day passed without me seeing or smelling my mate. Once in between classes, I was gathering my books from my locker. I turned about and almost ran into Patty, but stopped suddenly. I stared at her. She had a stony stare back. "I saw you yesterday," Patty told me, tilting her head slightly to the left. It was like she was sizing me up. I shrugged. "I didn't see you. I lied. I spilled my popcorn. But otherwise, I enjoyed the movie." She shoved me and said, "Not true. You were right in front of us. You did that on purpose." My temper flared when she shoved me, and I steadied myself to glare back at her. That was my seat, which I was assigned. I yelled back, "I guess you two were the obnoxious couple behind us making kissing noises the whole time. Disgusting." Patty looked a little flustered by my sudden outburst, but apparently had no good comeback. Instead, she took my books from my arms and threw them to the ground. I did not bother saying anything else. I just sighed loudly and began to gather my books back in my arms and made my way to class. After lunch, things did not improve. I was in art class painting a picture of the moon when a careless individual knocked into me and caused me to spill paint all over myself. I didn't get to see who it was, and I knew Patty was not in this class, so I decided to try my best to clean up. But my outfit was ruined. Carol wanted to drive me home from school that day, but I told her no, I wanted to be alone. I walked home crying and wondering what was wrong with me. I didn't even get to see my mate today. Maybe it was better that he did not see me, but it was still so unfair. I entered our house and ran upstairs before my parents saw what a mess I was. I got changed and came downstairs. I wanted to go out to have a walk. I saw on the clock that it was almost tea time. "Hey, Mom, Dad," I hollered, and they answered from the kitchen. "I am going to Carol's house. I left my bag in her room." "Okay, honey." My dad called back to me, "Just don't be too late." "Okay." "No problem, Dad," I answered and headed out the door. I decided to go to the place where I met my mate the other day. I needed to see him. I hoped I would see him. I dashed out to the forest to find the river. The moon was beautiful tonight, and the stars were evident in the sky. The night was brisk, and I could see my breath coming out in puffs of clouds, but it felt so perfect. It felt like the perfect night to find my mate again. When I got to the river, there he was, once again, the light of the moon illuminated my handsome black wolf. He was in wolf form again, but I did not shift. I was just so happy to see him. Triton's paw. I got home later that evening. I started my patrols with my pack before dawn and did not get home until sunset. It was an exhilarating day, but my mind kept drifting back to Ariana. I felt that I needed to return to school again tomorrow. This plan was not working. Try as I may, I could not bear to be apart from her. I couldn't help but wonder if she was still being persecuted at school and I was not there to save her. I was about to make myself something easy for dinner when I spotted her shawl. It was lying in my living room near the TV where I left it.
I remembered the night I first saw her in the woods when she gave me this shawl. I walked over and I could smell her scent on it.
Before I knew exactly what I was doing, I tore off my clothes and morphed into a wolf. I dashed off across the field into the forest. I needed to get to the river. Surely she would meet me there again. I came to the river and I saw a figure approaching from a distance. I saw her silky brown hair. She came back and she was in human form. I wouldn't dare to shift, not yet. It was too dangerous for her to know who I was yet. She came to me and threw her arms around my neck. I missed you, she whispered, and she hugged me. I wanted to tell her just how much I missed her too. I nuzzled her and she seemed to like it. I could not stay, though her smile was so radiant and her touch so warm, and yet I knew this was wrong. There was no way I could be with her. She touched my ears gently and I could no longer wait. I turned and dashed away. I heard her say something, but could not listen. I needed to figure out what I should do. Chapter 13, The Scent of Autumn and Lavender. I was walking south through the forest that ran alongside the town. I was headed downtown to pay a visit to the herbalist. She lived somewhere on the outskirts of the main part of town in a very unassuming house. She could be challenging to locate, and I did not want to be spotted going to her place. I needed a special favor requiring the utmost secrecy. The good part was she was not a social person. She did not get involved with the pack disputes or the rivalries. She simply worked her herbs and did her duties quietly. I knew her home was near the river. It was the same river I met my mate at in the evening that runs all around the parameters of the territories. It was one of the defining features of the packs. You might say it's one of the few things that binds us together. The weather was warmer today, and I only wore my light overcoat. The fallen leaves painted the landscape red beneath the trees, and they crunched beneath my feet as I went in my pocket. I fingered my money as I thought about what I was planning to do. I could not resist Ariana. I knew I needed to see her. I knew I wanted to be with her at school. I couldn't bear the thought of not being able to protect her when she needed me. I decided that I would return to school again. As much as I loved having the time to help my pack with their scouting, training, and hunting, I knew that Ariana needed me more. I could not reveal myself to her yet, but I could be near her. What I needed was something to mask my scent. I turned to the right as I saw the cobblestone street come into view. I could hear the river running nearby, and I looked about at the tiny white houses with their black shutters lining the streets. The people on this side of town were very quiet and always grew a lot of flowers. The houses all looked very similar to one another. I needed to find the home with the right herbs growing outside. House after the house passed my view with pansies and mums blooming in glorious fall colors. But no herbs just yet until I arrived at the very last house on the street. It had many flowers as well, but even more green herb. I saw tarragon, thyme, lavender, and rosemary. It smelled heavenly. I slowly approached the small wooden door and gave it a light knock. No one answered, and I waited and waited. I was nervous to knock again because I did not want to be rude. I knew these folks in this area of town don't like rudeness, but when 5 minutes passed without an answer, I decided to try again. But the door flung open when I knocked on the door one more time. The phone was completely dark, and I hesitantly entered. It was a home filled with herbs hanging from the rafters, and the scent of earth and soap hit my nose. As soon as I crossed the threshold, "Hello," I called into the dark room. No response. I slowly stepped more into the home when the door was slammed shut behind me. I froze. I could not see anything except a match being struck and illuminating an old bony finger. A candle was lit, and I could just make out the face of a wrinkled old woman. She peered at me for a long moment before shuffling towards me. She looked like she was a foot and a half shorter than I was. "Hello, miss." I greeted her when she came up to me. She still did not say anything and just eyed me down for a very long time. I did not know how much of me she could even distinguish in the darkness. After a long time, she finally said something. "Son, what do you seek?" She asked me in a quiet, almost inaudible voice. I am seeking something to hide my scent," I told her after clearing my throat several times. She smiled to herself and asked, "Do you wish to remain secret then?" "What for?" I need to keep this secret," I stammered. "Son, I don't help mass criminals. You need to be honest with me." She rebuked me softly.
Oh no, I declared defensively. Nothing illegal. It's just I have girl trouble. I need it to remain a secret, and I can't let her know who I am.
She chuckled lightly and hobbled to her desk. She mumbled some words as she ground something with a mortar and pestle. She clasped it together in her hands and put it into a bag. She stumbled back to me and handed me the small linen bag. She handed it to me. I smelled it. "Lavender," I said in surprise. She nodded firmly. "Yes, it is the best scent to mask yours. Yours is a strong scent. Sun lavender is the best one for what you need," she answered confidently. I was shocked. Lavender was the first scent she thought of when she saw me, but she seemed so confident I could not argue with her. "Thank you," I told her with a smile and reached into my pocket to get the money, but she stopped my hand. She shook her head and smiled before motioning me out the door. I was a little surprised by that whole visit, but I decided to see what she gave me. Inside the bag was ground of lavender and a small vial with oil in it. I rubbed it on my wrist and smelled it. "Lavender," I sighed. I guess smelling like a flower was a price I must pay to be near Ariana. She was worth that, though. Ariana's pup. I dashed down the hall as I shifted my books in my arms. I could feel them beginning to topple in my hands as I struggled to avoid having them spill all over the floor. Then, as I turned the corner, not watching where I was going, I slammed right into something hard. There went my books and paper. I fell to my knees as I stammered an apology to whoever I had just slammed into and struggled to gather my books and papers into my hands once more. I glanced at the person who had bent over to help me gather my books. My whole body stopped and my mouth fell open when I saw who it was. Triton. There he was, right next to me, wearing a handsome blue jacket with his dark hair combed nicely. I smelled soap when he was near me, which was not what I expected from a man at his age. I stammered to say something, but I felt nothing very coherent come out of my mouth. He simply looked at me and smiled gently as he handed me my homework. I was so shocked. I did not even thank him as he turned and walked to his class. I haven't seen him in ages. Where had he been? "Hey, girl," came the familiar voice of Carol from behind me. I turned to face her. "Oh, hey, Carol," I said back. My mind was still lost in thought. "What's up, girl?" she asked me, noticing the weird look on my face.
I just saw Triton, I told her, and he smelled like soap.
She giggled. Well, at some point, guys stopped smelling like old socks. I'm surprised he's back, she said back to me. Yeah, was all I said back as we entered the class, but I could not forget the scent. After I put down my books, I quickly texted. Triton was asking what that scent was. I knew it probably sounded like a weird question, but I really couldn't ignore the scent. But anyway, he never answered me. After I got home from school that day, I decided to return to the river to see my mate. I needed to see him. Things were so strange right now. I dashed through the woods and arrived at our regular meeting place. He apparently thought the same thing because there he was, waiting amidst the red autumn leaves. Chapter 14, Moon touches Ariana's palm. My heart slowed down as I saw his calm figure across the river as always. His black hair looked smooth as silk, and his eyes looked piercing. I smiled, a giant smile, and started to make my way across the river. It was brisk, but fortunately, there were some stones I could jump across on. Hello, I greeted my mate as I threw my arms around him. This time, he returned my affection and nuzzled me with his nose. I kissed his ears. His eyes gazed back at me with an intense stare, as if he was trying to communicate to me. He slowly licked my nose in the most gentle manner. Ariana said and kissed his nose back. Just when I hoped he would reveal himself to me, he stood up and began to walk away from me. Wait, don't leave, I said urgently. I did not want him to run away again. But when he turned his face back to me, his eyes seemed to tell me something. He was not leaving. His eyes beckoned to me. He wanted me to come with him. I realized. I slowly stood up from the leaf-strewn floor and made my way towards him. He began to dash through the woods. I knew he wanted me to follow this time, so I ran after him. The forest was getting dark, and the moon was beginning to throw its beam down to the forest floor. I loved the silver light. It painted the trees. I saw my mate a couple of feet in front of me and marveled at his silver coat. I hoped that I looked half as good as he did. My breath came out in puffs, but I felt my heart pumping and my body coming to life. This felt so good. I felt my body moving up a hill. I had never seen this part of the woods before, but the trees were larger and the hill provided a gorgeous view of the moon. We crested over the hill, and I felt sure I could touch the moon if I stretched my arm out. He led me down the slope of the hill, which brought us to a waterfall. This was where the river started. It seemed I had no idea. The waterfall fell down the sides of the hills into a beautiful, seemingly glowing pool of water that trickled out into the brook of the forest. The moon shimmered in the sky amidst the stars in perfect view at the bottom of the hill. The moon seemed to make up most of the sky, and the stars were dancing beside it. I sat down on the side of the pool of water at the base of the waterfall. My mate lay down in the grass beside me. He rested his head on my lap. I heard the roar of the waterfall not far from us, and I felt the beat of his heart seeming to beat in unison with it. I felt like if I spoke, the moment would be ruined entirely. I continued watching the moon and the stars illuminating the brisk night sky with the occasional shooting star darting over the face of the moon. Oh, did you see that? I would gasp every time, and he always gazed up at me with a knowing look in his eye. I could just as easily have spent all this time simply gazing into his eyes and watching the streaks of blues and grays cascade across their surface. But I did not want to seem strange. Eventually, he took his nose and pressed me down to lie on my back to gaze up at the sky. He laid his head on my chest and watched the night sky with me. I could not believe the beauty of this moment. I had no idea how long the moment even lasted. It could have been 5 minutes or 3 hours. All I knew was it was perfect in every imaginable way. The warmth of his fire upon me made the chill of the evening seem minuscule. All that seemed to exist was our warmth amidst the coldness of the night. But then, just as I felt my body drifting away to dreamland, he lifted his head up and sat up. He beckoned to me to follow him, and I obliged. He led me through the long, almost silver-looking grass to a tunnel hidden behind the waterfall. "Oh my, there is something back there?" I asked, feeling a little trepidation at the thought of entering a dark tunnel at night. He nodded slowly and gazed back at me intensely. I knew he was trying to tell me not to be afraid. I knew in my heart that he would protect me. I smiled back at him and ducked under the small entryway to the tunnel behind the waterfall. To my great surprise, the tunnel was relatively dry. The caverns were made of silver-colored rock, jagged at places. But the most stunning part of all was the source of the light inside these tunnels. On the walls of the cavern and above my head, on the high ceiling of the cave, were thousands upon thousands of small glow worms. They illuminated the cavern with soft light, that there were so many of them that it brought a strong light to the cave. I could easily distinguish everything in the cave. Oh my gosh, I gasped as I glanced over to my mate, who watched my face closely. He seemed pleased with my reaction. "Ah, you wanted to surprise me, didn't you?" I asked him, my mind still in awe of the seemingly star-studded roof of the caves. He simply continued watching my reaction, and I giggled. I gave him another hug around the neck. He licked my cheek and led me through this magical cavern. Never in a million years would I have thought something so magical could exist this close to my home. He obviously knew many things about this area that made me wonder more about who he was. How did he know so much about the landscape? As we exited the cavern on the other end, I could not hold back my curiosity anymore. "Why do you not show yourself to me?" I asked in a hushed tone as I ran my fingers through his fur. But to my disappointment, he did not shift. He gestured to once again follow him. Before I had the chance to really think about how to respond, he dashed away. I quickly followed him. He led me once again deep through the woods with only the moon and stars lighting our way. I did not even realize that we had passed by our meeting place again until after we passed it. But we soon stopped again. Near to our meeting place, he stopped suddenly, and I fell down beside him on the grass and leaves. The night air was cold, but my heart felt warm, so I did not mind it. "So what do you wish to show me?" I whispered as I gazed into his eyes once more. He did not blink. He simply gazed back at me in the moonlight. Chapter 15. Ariana's pub. I felt the pockets of my jeans for my lip balm. Carol told me to wear red lipstick if I was trying to impress a man, but I felt like my mate would find that too flashy. Before going out in the hall from English class, I quickly put some on. It smelled and tasted like strawberry. I quickly put my English books in my locker and made my way to baking class. We always had home economics in high school, and I actually really enjoyed this class. But today I felt very distracted. I kept glancing around like I expected to see someone. But I still was unsure who he was. I entered the class and sat in the back. My partner was not there yet. Usually I liked meeting my partner for the day, but I somewhat hoped they would not show up today. But after a couple of minutes, they arrived. I was looking over the recipe and then finally pulled my head up from the words. I was a little surprised to find Jessica, Triton's ex-girlfriend, seated beside me. Somehow, I had never gotten her as a partner. I knew about their breakup. Everyone did. But I wanted just to pretend I knew nothing. I'd wait to see how she addressed the topic. "Hey, Jessica," I chirped as she sat down next to me. "Oh, I love your outfit today." She responded by looking me in the eyes and glaring at me. I gulped. Apparently, that was not what she wanted to hear. But I really meant it. She was wearing a nice yellow blouse, and she curled her hair. She looked rather stunning. "Listen, kid," she said to me in a condescending tone, "I don't need you to make me feel better." She said the last part while making air quotes with her fingers. I looked down at my lap. Why was she being so rude? I know she just broke up and everything. But so did I. I wasn't being bitchy to her. I decided to start putting the batter together for the recipe. I didn't even get to dance with him at the Moon Goddess Ball," she said to me in a quiet tone. She did not look at me when she said it. She just pretended to be totally absorbed in separating the egg whites from the egg yolks. I cleared my throat nervously. I knew that one wrong word and she'd get furious. I decided to encourage her to keep talking so I'd avoid being the bad guy. "So did he find his mate that night?" I asked her. I wasn't really interested in the answer, but to my shock and horror, she slowly turned her head and glared at me once again. I swallowed hard again and waited for her to either answer me or punch me. "Why would you care, kid?" she asked me in a hushed tone. I could feel cold sweat forming on my neck and I wanted to run. I decided to look back at the recipe as if I was totally confused about baking cookie. "So anyway, I feel like he didn't even care about my outfit," she continued, and I felt incredibly relieved. I went all out, but did he care? No, he was too busy gawking at, "Oh, well, never mind." She stopped talking at that point, but even though I did not look at her, I felt an icy stare boring into the side of my head. "Triton is a nice guy," I blurted out, unable to stop myself when I started. "I am sure he didn't mean to hurt you. He's actually thoughtful under his gruff exterior." "Kid," she said, including the kid again for the millionth time, "you don't know anything. He is not what you think. Trust me. I've been dating him for 2 years, so I know him better than you do. And believe me, he is not a nice guy." Well, I shivered and I thought she noticed because a small grin crossed her face as it happened. I felt my heart begin to sink in a way I did not completely understand. I thought about what she said. I realized she was right. I really did not know Triton that well. Actually, if anyone knew him, it was Jessica. After a class, we had lunch, so I gathered my stuff and made my way out to the hallway. I was distracted as I left. Maybe Triton was not what I thought he was. Triton Pavlov. I followed a friend into the cafeteria. I was hoping my goofball friend would be able to distract me from my constant thoughts of Ariana, but no such luck. I kept thinking of her beautiful brown silken hair and her sweet eyes, how her hands went over my back and caressed my fur. We sat at the table in the middle of the cafeteria with some football players and cheerleaders. They seemed happy to see me and shook my hand and asked what was up. I answered everything automatically. I was not thinking about this meaningless conversation. I was thinking about Ariana still. I poked at my food as a cheerleader complimented my chin when I was distracted by someone talking at the table behind me. "Oh yeah, Ariana was okay. I heard the voice of Alex speaking to Patty and some of their friends. But she's so naive, and I guess she thought I really loved her." A loud roar of laughter coursed through the people at the table. I felt my blood pressure rising as I heard them. "Yeah, he needed a real woman like me." I heard Patty coo in a seductive voice. "I nearly gagged on my sandwich. Her a real woman." I stood up and started to walk towards their table. I knew this was a bad idea and that it could disturb the make-believe peace we had between our pack. But at the moment, I really didn't care. I started over to their table and stared at Alex. At first, he did not notice me, then he ignored me, and finally he could not ignore me anymore and stared back at me. You wouldn't know a real woman from a drag queen, I said to him in a menacing tone. The food that was in his mouth fell out as the shock of the moment set in. Patty, who had her legs up on his lap, stood up to yell at me, but I stopped her before she said anything. Figures, your guardian will defend you, Alex, I said to him, but I was eyeing her. She glared back at me with fire in her eyes, but Alex made her sit down. So, you want to do this, Triton, Alex said, standing up and flexing his arms. I glared at him and cracked my knuckles. Whatever you want, I answered. I felt my blood boiling. I wanted to punch his teeth in. How dare he speak about Ariana that way? I was going to humiliate him, and it was going to feel great. I didn't even care about the so-called peace. Chapter 16, Fight, Fight, Fight. Ariana's puff. I walked slowly through the school hallway towards the cafeteria. I really wasn't thinking much about food. I was too busy thinking about the conversation with Jessica. She really thought Triton was not good. Was it just because Triton was her ex-boyfriend? Maybe she was not thinking logically about him and what he was like. Although I knew I thought badly of Alex too, and I really believed my opinion was valid about him. He betrayed me and left me. He made me feel terrible about myself, and no one liked someone who made them feel that way. However, Triton seemed too nice to do something like that on purpose. I hugged my books to my chest. Maybe it did not really matter. Maybe it didn't really matter what she thought. Maybe I knew Triton better than she did. I comforted myself with these words in my head. But part of me still felt uneasy. But then I remembered my mate and how he took me away to the waterfall that night. When I thought of that meeting, most of the drama at school sort of skipped away. I was at peace beneath the sky of stars with my love. I only wished he would shift and show me himself. My thoughts were interrupted when I entered the cafeteria. I saw almost everyone crammed around the table where Alex and Patty usually sat. I tried to make out what was going on. I put my books down on a nearby table and slowly approached the frenzied children that swarmed the table. I shoved my way through the crowd and tried to see over their heads. Carol was just ahead of me. I tried to push my way up to her. Hey, Carol, I yelled over the noise, but she did not turn around. I kept calling out to her as I continued moving through the crowd. Finally, I tripped over someone's foot and went stumbling into the empty circle they all stood about. I shook my head to shake off the dizziness from the fall and quickly got back to my feet. I looked at what all the commotion was about and saw Triton facing Alex. Both boys had their fists clenched and stood with their legs apart. I was shocked at what I saw, and it took me a second to fully understand what it meant. Are you two fighting? I yelled before I thought through the statement. It sounded really dumb now that I said it out loud. I hoped they would not hear me, but apparently I had no such luck. I could hear Carol from behind me. She sounded like she was pleading with me to get back in the crowd of people. But I was too shocked that the boys were about to fight. And not just a small scuffle. This looked like a hot-blooded fight was about to come to pass. I could not run away. Ariana, get back to the safe place, I heard Triton say. He did not look at me because Alex would take advantage of his distraction if he did for sure. I hesitated. I didn't want to make him angry, but I could not stand down. I needed to stop this. I saw the two of them start fighting. They swung punches and threw each other across the floor. I felt my body quiver as I considered jumping in. I'd for sure get beat up, but I could not allow this to continue. Please stop, please, I shouted from the sidelines, but they did not even look my way. I tried to wave my arms and order them to stop, but they continued anyway. I felt my heart sink. I needed to get in there and stop it right away. I dashed into the fray and found myself going towards Alex. I had an opportunity to push him down when the two of them were apart from each other. I grasped his arm and ordered him to stop it right now. You are my pack and I'm the daughter of the Alpha. I merely spat this in his face as I said it. It felt kind of good to be yelling at him. Finally, I order you to stand down this instant. Stop this right now. I continued to hold his arm as he struggled and stared back at me. His eyes were crazed when they looked in my eye. Get off me, he shouted as he tried to shake me off again, but I held tight. His arm quivered beneath my grip. I did not weaken my grasp. I dug my nails into his arm. He hissed at me and shoved me off, but I was quick to get back at him. I ordered you to stand down. Now stand down, I shouted as I shoved him back. I did not intend to push him, but I was so angry. I slammed him with my shoulder blade to push him back. He fell back against the chair of the cafeteria table. His head hit the leg of the chair with a thud. I gasped at my own actions and waited to see how he might respond. He slowly lifted his head and gave it a shake. Everyone around us began to laugh and point. Then I heard them start to snicker at him. A girl bested Alex. I heard a football player say to the guys beside him, soon everyone was saying this to each other. Alex lay on the floor with his eyes flickering back and forth between me and between the crowd. I could see the rage in his eyes as he did, so he had been utterly humiliated. I did not intend this, but here we were. Part of me felt avenged in a way, but then things took a sharp turn. I saw a smile slowly spread across his face. His eyes flickered. He was about to do something diabolical. Oh, Triton, just ignore her. I heard Alex say to him, but I knew he was trying to upset me. Ariana is not worth getting all beat up over, trust me. She wasn't even good in bed. I felt my skin crawl and my cheeks grow hot. I never had sex with him. I was waiting to find my mate. Our plan was to find out we were mates on the night of the ball and consecrate our relationship after that. But that never happened. How could Alex say something like that? I felt so mixed up, I barely took note of the whispers from the crowd around me. I was just about to run up and scream at him when the fight took a turn. I heard Triton from behind me. He let out a snort, like a vicious bull in a bullfight. I had only enough time to leap out of his way before Triton pushed past me. I heard Triton curse at Alex and pounced on him. I gasped, why did Triton get so angry about Alex's words? I covered my mouth in shock, but I quickly got my wits back when I heard Patty screaming from the sidelines. Chapter 17, Us Before You. Ariana's paw. Stop it. Patty screamed again and again, pacing back and forth. She seemed torn. I was worried she might jump in and start boxing with them. I felt my body ready to jump in on her, but something held me back. I realized how bad this would become very quickly. Alex was a jerk, but he was a member of my pack. I heard the boys behind me speaking about jumping in to help Triton. They were loyal members of his pack. I noticed this could become an all-out brawl between the packs. I shook off my urges to jump in and beat up Patty and started to dash towards the back door. Instead, I shoved my way through the crowd of riled-up kids. Get out of my way. I kept shouting as I pushed one kid out of my way after another. They barely noticed me except for Carol. I heard her voice from behind me as she tried to follow me through the throng to help me. I would not look back at her, though, or wait for her. The ever-shaking peace between our packs hung by a thread. I was the daughter of the Alpha. I had the responsibility, and I needed to do it. I finally got out of the throng and burst back into the expanse of the cafeteria. I lost Carol somewhere in the crowd. I looked around frantically. I saw the back door again with the red exit sign lit. I dashed towards it as fast as I could. I hoped my memory was correct. I saw the fire extinguisher and felt a glimmer of hope spring back in my heart as I got closer.
There it was, beside the extinguisher, the red fire alarm. I heard the noise and clamor of the fight growing stronger. I knew pulling it was the right thing to do.
I punched the glass around the alarm and ignored the blood which flowed down my knuckles. I reached into the little box and pulled the alarm for some reason. I closed my eyes as I did it. I heard a loud alarm blare, and the sprinkler system went off. Suddenly, I saw chaos break out in the throng of kids surrounding the fight. Everyone began screaming as they apparently thought the building was on fire. No one seemed to notice that I stood away on the corner holding the alarm. They thought the building was on fire. I grinned oddly. A large number of kids ran out of every nearby door. Some even ran right past me without noticing me and dashed outside through the emergency back door. But at that moment, I saw several teachers and administrators soaking wet enter the cafeteria with several firefighters. I saw they were trying to stop the children from running and were trying to beckon them out of the building. I saw a firefighter walking towards me. I gulped. I was pretty much incriminated now, holding the alarm with a bloody hand. He came up to me and motioned me outside. I could barely hear anything over the screams and the alarms, but I thought they knew I pulled the alarm. I hoped they would understand why I did that. Once we were all outside, I was surprised that the firefighters did not question me. I saw the teachers scolding and questioning students. I just watched, unable to think of what I should do in this situation. I saw Triton and Alex. Triton had a large gash above his eye. A strip of bright red blood trickled down the side of his face. But that seemed to be the only scrape he got from the fight. Alex, on the other hand, had blood smeared across his face and covering his fist. I saw the two of them still eyeing each other aggressively. I had a feeling things had changed in our school. There was no way things could go back to normal. Now Alex opposed me, his future alpha, and Triton had broken the peace by aggressively fighting Alex. The weak balance of peace we had between our packs was shaken. I was worried. Because of the crazy day we had all just had, we were dismissed early. I could imagine the teachers were concerned about what might happen if we were permitted to continue the day. I gathered my books from where they were on the cafeteria table. I should have put them away when I could. I thought with a sigh, they were soaking wet. I decided not to worry about it and just put them away and get home. I had enough today. I headed to my locker, put the wet books on the bottom, and locked it. Carol met me in the hallway and asked if I was leaving early. Yeah, I decided it is better to just call it quits today. I told Carol. I think I will too. She concurred with me. I want to get home and ask my parents about what will happen. I hope nothing will happen. I can't help but feel nervous about everything that is happening right now. Tension was already high between the packs, but I could tell that beneath her strong and positive cover, she was nervous. I knew she always felt that her position in the school was not on firm ground because of her parents, but I could see she was even more nervous now. We walked home together again through the forest. She broke away from me halfway and bid me good night. I sighed when I thought of her. She lived closer to the Black Sky pack. Would she need to make a decision about which pack to join? When I got home, I noticed my parents were not present in the kitchen. I was home a little earlier today, so maybe they were both still busy with work. I set my backpack down on the floor and took off my shoes. As I made myself hot tea, I heard my dad's voice calling me from his study. I turned off the stove and made my way to my father's study. I felt nervous. I had a phone call from school. My father said, without so much as a greeting, he took off his glasses, cleaned them with a handkerchief, and put them back on, eyeing me. His eyes seemed angry. I gulped. The piece is breaking, Ariana, he told me in a flat tone, but I heard the anger quivering behind his calm guise. They are pushing to have the schools separated now, more than ever. Father, I did what I could. I told him in hushed tone. That is not enough. Ariana, he shouted at me. You are the alpha's daughter. I expect you to behave better. You should have put Alex in his place, but you were not able to do that. I looked down at my cut-up hand again. I felt my father was disappointed in me because I was not born a boy. What will become of Carol? I whispered, with tears in my eyes. Ariana, he answered me in a harsh tone. You must learn to put the needs of the tribe above your personal feelings. I dismissed myself and cried in my room. Chapter 18, Triton's Pulse. I looked at the old clock across the hall from where I sat. My butt hurt on the hard wooden chair. I had been sitting there for almost an hour. Pretty much everyone has already left for the day. I looked down at my fingers. I felt my powerful grip inside my hand. I knew I could very easily crush that kid. I could have inflicted pain on him quickly. And I did. I remembered how his eyes held so much fear when I pounced upon him and pressed him down with a crushing weight. His eyes were wild. It was like he saw his life flash before his eyes. He finally realized who he was messing with. When I was angry, I was a beast. I was taken over with rage and violence. I knew I could have killed him if I wanted to. His eyes filled with fear, his lips quivering in fear and agony. I knew he knew what I was capable of. He was not capable of such an act. He talked big and acted like a badass, but he was a weak-willed little boy underneath his guise. The thought that Ariana even dated him made me feel sick. I knew there was no way such a pure girl would sleep with such a sleazebag. But the idea just made my stomach churn. I saw his face. In my mind, again the terror stricken across it. I felt fear of my own might and capacity for destruction. I looked up again at the clock and moaned when I realized only 5 minutes had passed since I last looked at it. Time seemed to be standing still right now, as if I was Dante stuck in the seventh circle of hell, just trying to find the end of it all. No matter how torturous the whole place was. I closed my eyes, trying to re-examine my behavior when my thoughts were interrupted by someone calling my name. Triton, I heard the voice call my name once again, causing me to open my eyes in a flicker. My eyes fell upon Jessica. She was wearing a heavy denim jacket over her light skirt and shirt. She probably got wet with the sprinkler and was trying to stay warm now. She never wore denim like that unless it was for a good reason. Jessica, I said back to her coldly, I did not want to discuss the breaking of our relationship again. I never wanted to hurt her. But as she said, we couldn't argue with fate. I need to speak with you about Ariana, she said to me with a cold look in her eye. I don't care what you do with your love life, and do not mistake this as jealousy on my part. She sat down on the wooden chair beside me. I felt a little uncomfortable with her so close. It was always so strange when you were close to your ex after a bad breakup. It's like the whole atmosphere became suffocating. I played it off pretty well, though. What about her? I asked her stiffly. Well, don't think everyone in the cafeteria missed what that fight was really all about. She answered me with a roll of her eye. Everyone saw you beat Alex to a pulp after he called Ariana a slut. You're not thinking clearly, Triton. You just have a crush and you're allowing it to inform your decisions about that girl. I groaned in annoyance, even if she was right.
I wasn't going to hear this lecture from her.
I was going to listen to it from my parents any minute. Now, maybe she was right, but she knew Ariana was my soulmate. She knew why I did those things.
I know she's your soulmate. She told me so far. I haven't told anyone, not even Ariana.
But you need to see what this girl is doing to you. You aren't acting in the best interest of your pack anymore. Triton, your emotions are ruling you. Ariana acts all sweet and innocent, but really, maybe she is fooling you. You cannot fake a soul connection with your mate, Jessica. I scolded her, getting angry. No, maybe you can't, she hissed back at me, but you can manipulate others with that energy. How do you know she isn't fooling you just because you're mates? That doesn't guarantee you will end up together. It doesn't mean you will live happily ever after. Because if you don't cut this out, I will tell her who you are. I'll tell everyone what's going on. She stood up suddenly and marched away. I thought about what she said to me as much as I wanted to believe that everything was going to work out between Ariana and me. I could not doubt Jessica's logic. It is true that mates did not always end up together. They might settle for someone who was not their mate. Maybe they hadn't met their mate until after they had already married. Or like in my case, my mate was of the opposite pack, the enemy pack to be exact. And I was easily persuaded to act in her favor. Was I being negligent as the alpha son? Maybe I was behaving selfishly by allowing my feelings to get the better of me. I continued to toss the thought around my mind and think about what I should do as time continued to pass. Slowly. Get up, son. I heard the voice of my father. I opened my eyes to find my dad and mom staring back at me. I guess I fell asleep somehow while I sat in the hallway waiting. My mother's face was filled with sorrow. My dad's face, on the other hand, was filled with anger and disappointment. I quickly jumped to my feet and grabbed my backpack. I did not apologize to my parents as I was taken out of the school like a prisoner being let out of jail. They did not speak for a long time as we drove home. My mom occasionally glanced back at me in the rearview mirror, but quickly glanced away. You have disgraced me, son. My father's chilly voice broke the silence in the car. He acted carelessly and selfishly. I remained silent. I decided to just let him keep going. I didn't know how I felt about what I did just yet, but I was not in the mood to argue. Why on earth did you even ask to go back to school? He continued in rage. Again, I did not answer. I did not want to tell him about Ariana, about how she was the reason I went back to school. When we got home, I got out of the car and went inside without saying a word to them. I undressed. I threw off my shoes, my coat shirt, pants, and everything else. I morphed into a wolf. I needed to see her. I needed to be with her. I dashed out of the house without being detected. The night was cold, and the moon was nowhere to be seen. I came to the river. There she was, across the steam from. She was waiting for me. Chapter 19, Dresses and Gowns. Ariana's post. I saw him standing there across the creek from me, and I felt my heart beat quickly. His fur looked like black silk in the silver moonlight. His dark eyes looked like the night sky peering out at me from beneath the shade of his eyebrows. It made me think of how the stars peer through the breaks in the tree. Hello, I called to him with a smile and a wave as I excitedly hopped across the stone path over the river. He could not respond to me with words, but I saw it in his eyes. He was happy and excited to see me too. When I got to the other side of the river, I threw my arms around his furry neck and nestled my head into his fur. It had a strength to it that also felt beautifully soft and luscious. I felt like I was burying all my stress from the day away in his mane of fur. It seemed to feel alive beneath my face and held some magic in it. I felt my pain sort of beginning to fade away to a distant memory. He leaned over casually and laid down in his eyes. I read that he wanted me to lay with him. I curled up comfortably on the earth and leaned my body against his large body. I was always amazed by the sheer size of my mate. He was large and compromised completely of muscle. I felt his muscles beneath my head as my head rested on his stomach. I felt his powerful heartbeat echo in his body. It seemed to bounce about my mind and head. Soon, I felt my heartbeat match his and my eyes closed in peaceful quietness. After a few hours of this peaceful rest, we decided to say goodnight and I headed back to my house. It was the most lovely way to unwind after the dreadful day we all had. The following day, I felt a little groggy as my alarm went off to wake me for school. The sun was still not yet over the horizon, and I stretched my body out as I felt my joints feel relieved. The night was exactly what I needed, but I stayed up much too late. I chuckled to myself, though. I knew I would do it again. I grabbed a quick muffin for breakfast and walked to school. I met Carol outside, and she spoke a million miles a minute about what occurred yesterday. I found myself constantly interjecting to say, I know, right? She would nod enthusiastically and then continue her ranting. She was so amusing the way she could just keep going. But I guess with all the talk about splitting the school up, she must feel nervous. I could not blame her, really. It made me nervous too. I did not want to discourage her any more than she already was, though. And did you hear the way Alex spoke to you yesterday? She exclaimed, but did not wait for an answer. I mean, you must have, because you immediately pounced on him. I mean, really, that was actually impressive. I know we aren't supposed to seek violence, but my moon god, he deserved that. I could not help but chuckle as I said, yeah, I guess. She seemed a little skeptical at my response and stopped me from walking in the hall and asked me, is there something you need to tell me? I stared at her, trying not to look her in the eye. Honestly, I was thinking about my mate and how nice it was last night, how I did not even need to worry about yesterday anymore. He made me feel complete again, but I did not know who he was. So I decided not to tell Carol just yet. Oh, I'm just still thinking about yesterday. I lied with a shrug and a grin. Oh, girl, don't worry about that, she said, giving me a solid tap on the shoulder. We all know Alex was lying. I forgot what he said yesterday. Up until just now, I sighed and parted ways with Carol to go to my English class. I turned to head to my classroom and caught sight of Triton talking with Jessica. I pretended not to notice them, but I found myself slowing down ever so slightly in hopes I might hear something they said, but I heard nothing. To my disappointment, I entered the class and the teacher began lessons, but I could not listen. My mind was elsewhere. I thought about how Triton seemed to be defending me yesterday, but he also said we could not speak to each other. And there he was, whispering to Jessica in the hallway. Were they back together again? Was that the reason he could not speak to me anymore? I buried my head in my arms on my desk. I did not cry, but part of me felt like I could if I tried hard enough. After class, the school was out. I ran into Carol again. She had a happy look on her face as she pretty much skipped up to me. Her golden hair bounced about her ears and a smile lit up her face. I stared back at her, feeling perplexed. Girl, I realized something while Mr. Paxton was rambling on and on today in literature class. She started to tell me about her sudden happiness. Well, he was talking about the psychological implications of fairy tales, like the Emperor's New Clothes and stuff, and how clothes play some important role in those stories. Anyway, it made me think, we have not gone clothes shopping in such a long time. So here we are. Do you want to go clothes shopping? I could not help but laugh in my mind at this a little. Her brain seemed to always go back to clothes in some way or another. I shook my head softly in disbelief at her mental gymnastics, but I still nodded at her as I said, I'd like to go clothes shopping. She grasped my arm tightly and tore me out of the school excitedly. She pretty much threw me in her truck and started driving into town. She talked a lot as we traveled, and I tried to be light-hearted and fun too. She was helpful in say about the day before. We got to the clothes store where several other girls from school were they were trying on some pretty gowns, so Carol and I joined them. Carol loved acting like a runway model, which made me laugh. I was thinking that Gary and I might not wait to be married to, consummate our mating. A girl named Evelyn said with a wink. There were several girls seated together now, and all of them were captivated by Evelyn's scandalous attitude. Does she mean sex? I blushed at the thought of it. I never spoke about such things so openly, and I felt double embarrassed because I wondered how many of them thought Alex was telling the truth the other day. Sometimes it's just, oh, good. What's the point of putting on an act? Evelyn continued, and the girls all gasped. We might even move in together. After hearing all about Evelyn's love life, Carol and I made our way through the alleyways back to the parking lot. Carol was telling me her philosophical ideas about sex and marriage. I don't recall what she actually said because my mind was distracted when I saw Alex and Patty kissing vigorously outside a cafe. I could tell they were doing it with their tongue too. My stomach did a flip, but I did not interrupt Carol as we entered the truck. Chapter 20, Pale and Like the Moon. Ariana's poem. I got into the truck, but I had not closed the door yet when I heard someone calling me. I looked up from my phone feeling perplexed and saw Patty making taunting gestures at me. Did she see me? What could she possibly see me? They must not get as deep into kissing as Alex, and I used to. I poked my head out the door and started to face Patty. Carol looked over at me with an expression that seemed to say, "What is the matter with that girl?" In response, I just sort of shrugged like I had no idea and started to walk towards Patty. I felt like I had a slight swagger to my step for the first time in a long time. I did not feel intimidated by her. I felt only confidence and certainty about myself as I walked towards her and Alex. I did not walk all the way up to them. I just stood on the curb across the street from where they stood outside the cafe. I folded my arms over my chest and stared at them with a confident snicker. "Who are you looking at, little girl?" Patty shouted at her cockily and put her hands on her hip. "He isn't too good at tongue, is he?" I asked her with a sly smile. Her face got red and Alex turned white. He looked shocked and scared and started mumbling nonsense. Patty looked back at him and told him to shut up. He, much to my joy, shut up right away. He was a total pushover. "Get away," Patty shouted at me as she stomped away in anger. Carol and I just stood there laughing at them for a good long while. After they were out of sight, Carol gave me a high five and said, "Way to go." I smiled back at her. We got in the truck and started to drive away. I felt great. The day was a crisp fall day. I spent a nice girl's day with my friend and saw Alex without having an emotional breakdown. Carol could not stop rambling about how cool I was, and I kept laughing. It felt good not to be emotionally distraught after seeing him. When we got back to my house, I invited Carol in, but she declined. It's almost dinner time. I don't want to bug your parents. I'll see you tomorrow," she said. With a wave, she started her truck and drove away. I watched her leave. She used to stay over for dinner sometimes, but now she would not. I felt bad. I knew she did not want to go in because of the fight at school. She probably felt unsure about how my dad would see her, or maybe something like that. I let out a sigh. I felt like things would keep getting worse. Things were changing so fast. I felt in my heart that all I wanted was to cuddle with my soulmate again. He brought me so much comfort yesterday. I turned to go inside to get ready to go out and see him. Hi, Ariana. My mom greeted me as I entered the kitchen. I quickly pushed through to get to the stair going upstairs, but was stopped by my mom. Honey, you can't go out tonight, she told me, gently grasping my wrist. I turned around to look at her, confused. I can't. I asked her. I hoped she did not know I was going to the forest. I did not want my parents to know I had found my mate yet. She smiled and said, "Don't worry, it's just for tonight. I just need your help finishing preparing dinner." I sighed and felt panic rise in my throat. Dinner me? Why me? I needed to go. I looked around desperately, as if I was thinking there would be some answer out there in the kitchen, telling me what to say. But nothing came to me. I had no good excuse to deny my mom this without raising her suspicion. "Come on, silly," she told me with a grin. "We used to always make dinner together, and I am making some chicken pot pies. So while I will make the filling, you can roll the crusts out for me." Again, I could not deny her, so I smiled and entered the kitchen. At first, I tried to speed the process along, but she seemed dead set on making it last forever. Eventually, I just gave up and started to move slower. I could not stop thinking about my mate. Was he okay? Maybe he was worried about why I was not there. I hoped he wouldn't be angry that I did not show up like I always did. I hoped he didn't worry that I was with someone else or something. I felt panic in my chest as I thought about every possible scenario. All the while, I needed to make small talk with my parents and act perfectly normal. I helped my mom clean up after dinner as well. I kept looking outside for some reason. I hoped my mate would somehow come to me and comfort me. I watched TV with them for a while and then excused myself to go upstairs. It was so late already. I sat on my window chair and gazed outside. I saw the landscape painted silver with the moon, but it was only a small sliver of a moon tonight. Triton puff. I got home from school and immediately stripped of my clothes. I was going hunting for an hour or so with my pack members. And then after I would meet my mate at the river, I saw her face in my mind. It was so small and round like the moon herself, and her skin was so clear and white. It seemed to glow. I let out a small breath. She really was beautiful. I met my pack members in the fields, and we mostly hunted deer that day. We only had an hour or so, but it was important for all of us to do it together. It was a great way for us to bond as well. Every time I was with them, I was reminded of just how important my pack meant to me. But then I thought of Ariana, and she was the one outside of my pack. She was the one I loved more than any other. After taking down a nice-sized buck, I told my pack to take it back to our pack's municipal area. I told them I needed time to run alone. I just wanted to be sure they would not follow me. I ran across the fields and through the forest for about an hour. As soon as I was sure no one was around, I made my way to the river. But when I arrived at our usual spot, she was not there. No white, pale, wounded face peered back at me from across the river. My heart sank, but I knew if she did not come, something must have happened. I panicked. I started to dash through the forest at my top speed. In just a couple of minutes, I arrived at her home and tried to peer through her window. "Are you Ariana?" I thought. This part has ended. Thank you for listening. If you would like to continue listening to the next part, please let me know by leaving a comment.